Moving on, the Knesset exploding overnight with arguably the biggest showdown yet between Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Bennett, for one, trolling both the opposition as well as his predecessor turned opposition leader with a play on Netanyahu's own words from a few years back. Chamutzim, meaning sourpusses or pickles.
חבר הכנסת נתניהו, חברת הכנסת דיסטל וסמוטריץ', הפכתם לחמוצים החדשים. הפכתם לחמוצים החדשים. כי את מה שאתם הזנחתם, אנחנו מתקנים, ואתם החמוצים החדשים. רק מקטרים ומייללים ומתבכיינים. נכנסתם כל כך מהר לתפקיד החמוצים, שגם כשאתם רואים דברים נפלאים קורים, אתם לא יכולים לפרגן. אני אתן לכם דוגמאות. בואו ניתן דוגמאות. חבר הכנסת נתניהו פחד שבוע אחרי שבוע לקיים מצעד גלים, והוא דחה ודחה ופחד, ואז קיימנו. קיוויתי לראות מחיאות כפיים, כלום, רק קיטרתם, כי אתם החמוצים החדשים.
Bennett then going on to list a number of other examples of the opposition's apparent indignation, including over issues with coronavirus, Iran, Jordan, national security, and more. Bennett even mocked Netanyahu with an impersonation in which he admitted as Netanyahu to stealing other people's credit. Netanyahu and other right-wing opposition leaders, for their part, however, responding harshly to Bennett's address. Netanyahu blaming the new so-called fraudulent government under Bennett and Yair Lapid of spoiling coronavirus successes, capitulating to American demands, and abandoning the fight against the nuclear deal with Iran. So who's right? Joining me to discuss is Michael Kleiner, former Likud MK and president of the Likud Supreme Court, and Jeremy Saltan, political strategist and director of English operations for the Yamina Party. Thank you both so much for being with us. Now, Michael, I'll start with you. What are your reactions to Bennett's speech?
Look, this is Parliament. We are a democracy. Mr. Bennett has to get used to be Prime Minister and to be a little bit more Prime Minister-like in his approach and the way he speaks with the Knesset. On the other hand, he has also to realize that the task of opposition is to oppose. And there is one fact that Mr. Bennett cannot deny. You spoke about the corona before. When Netanyahu left office a month ago, there were less than 10 people, new people ill in corona a month ago, and now there are 700. So I don't put all the blame on Bennett, of course, but I guess it should be ended much earlier, in a more swiftly way. But Mr. Bennett was busy celebrating becoming Prime Minister, probably.
Okay. I'd like to hear your response. Jeremy.
Sure. You know, what we saw was the Prime Minister responding to a request by 40 MKs who signed their signatures from the opposition, who were looking to attack the Prime Minister on a number of issues, including some of the things that Michael just mentioned. What we saw was the Prime Minister going ahead and defending his record and listing the many accomplishments we've had over the last month. Now, I understand that the opposition is trying to go ahead and do everything possible in order to go ahead and bring us down, of course, led by MK Netanyahu. But what it comes down to is the fact that even when we have had right-wing accomplishments, such as for the first time with the Eviatar arrangement, leaving the buildings there instead of knocking them down, as happened during the Netanyahu administration, us going ahead and moving forward with the decision to have the Flag March parade. Of course, our decision to actually finally implement the law that goes ahead and takes away money that goes to terrorists in prison through the PA. I can keep going in terms of the 35 approvals that were done in terms of various areas within Judea and Samaria, things that were held up by Netanyahu as well. It's amazing how all of these things have suddenly escaped him.
Well, so I want to follow up. Why do you think, because you mentioned that Bennett felt the need to defend himself, but you know, I watched that speech and he went a little bit beyond just defending himself. He went on the attack. He named Knesset members. He smiled when they were being kicked out, and et cetera. He attacked several different politicians for being complainers, whiny sourpusses or pickles, as I enjoyed to translate that. So
Yes.
why did he feel? I mean, didn't it seem a little bit petty? A little bit, Jeremy?
I don't think it was petty at all. People who remember, we didn't have it during the last opposition that we were part of, but people who remember 10 years ago when we would have these monthly exercises of the 40 MK signature speeches, Netanyahu had the same tone. Perhaps people just have short memories. But what you have is a situation where you have a well-oiled machine being led by the Likud and MK Netanyahu that are going out every single day and spreading lies. Here we had an opportunity, thanks to the opposition, requiring the prime minister's presence and, of course, giving him a chance to give a rebuttal to the ridiculous speeches that were given beforehand. And you mentioned some of them, MKs, that, of course, the prime minister mentioned within his speech, who are some of the biggest stars in terms of going to the media and distorting the actual truth of what is happening in terms of course, Israel's national security concerns, our diplomatic relations, stuff that have to do with the coronavirus, and of course, many other, as I said, accomplishments that we've been able to bring to our right-wing constituency. So I do not find it petty at all. I think a lot of people that I spoke to after the speech, in fact, even some journalists sent me some messages that they were surprised to see Netanyahu going ahead and trying to continue with Bennett this situation, because of course after Bennett finished his speech, Netanyahu went up again, and then Bennett went up again, and you sort of have a situation that more resembles the UK Parliament of Prime Minister Question Hour, of this sort of back and forth with opposition, and I think this is a normal thing in a majority of parliaments around the globe.
All right, Michael, I want to come back to you because, tone aside, Bennett made some very interesting points. He accused the opposition, particularly the right-wing members of the opposition, of going against issues that ideologically they clearly support. For example, the flag march, the reunification bill, security issues. He attacked former Prime Minister Netanyahu of stealing credit from his colleagues, which is a complaint that we've heard over and over again over the years. Do none of these points make sense? Is it possible that the opposition is biting its nose to spite its face?
Most of them are, small issues. I believe Bennett exaggerated a little bit because in 1 month he had so many achievements he describes, and by the way, he took credit for them, and he also has ministers, so maybe they will complain he took credit. This is not the point. There's one important point in the issues you mentioned, and this is the reunification law, where here I have a harsher accusation towards the government. They, instead of, Bennett is the prime minister now, and Bibi Netanyahu is the head of opposition. So Bennett has a responsibility. He is the one who should have already invited the head of opposition as demanded by law, and giving him information and an update. But moreover, instead of trying to make a deal with Arab parties and Meretz regarding the reunification law and making very dangerous concessions that Likud never made, he should have invited Netanyahu and tried to get a compromise with Netanyahu in order to pass the bill, this necessary bill, that Likud, as the opposition, voted against it. By the way, I personally, if I would have been a member of Knesset, I would have voted in favor of it and not against it. But I can understand why Likud, as an opposition, mustn't help rescue the government which is unable to get its own majority. If you created a government, you cannot get a majority without terrible concessions for such an important bill, so maybe you have to make some reconsiderations.
All right, Jeremy, final comments, if you'd like to respond.
Yeah, look, it's for the opposition leader to decide what it is that he wants to do. It was his decision to politicize the reunification law, the citizenship law, and put national security at risk, something that he did not do the 12 years when he was prime minister. It was unfortunate since he saw the legal position that was put out by the Shabak, by the Shin Bet. I think it's too bad, but you know, it was his decision to make a deal with Ahmed Tibi and then accuse us of making a deal with Mansour Abbas. I think instead of trying to go ahead and be responsible about the issue as we did when we were in the opposition and voted for this, he could have done the same thing. He chose politics over country. That's his right.
All right. I know that we have a lot more to discuss here, but in the meantime, Jeremy Saltan, Michael Kleiner, thank you so much for joining us with your insights.